Hey everyone, welcome to module 15 of A+. Now for those of you that's been following this course all the way from the beginning, you're probably already aware that this course actually consists of 18 modules. And we are currently on module 15. So there's not much left in this course, and the good news is the remaining modules are actually very short in length. So we're actually going downhill at this point in time. Now today's module is obviously all about laptops, and here we have, like usual, the main topic. So more specifically, the first one's going to be using laptop features. This includes, but is not limited to, things like using your function keys on the keyboard, things that's going to be unique to your laptop. Secondly, installing and configuring laptop hardware, because laptops are not the same as desktops. With a desktop PC, if you were to go and open a desktop PC and you were to go and peek inside, you've seen one, you've seen them all. So the motherboard will be in the same place with most of them. CPU, RAM, power supply, all of that would generally be in the more or less same vicinity in most of these cases. Really is a matter of you've seen one, you've seen them all. Laptops, not so much. So if I were to open my laptop and I were to peek inside, and let's say I see my RAM first, doesn't mean that's going to be the same case for your laptop. They do vary from laptop to laptop. They vary from make to make and from model to model. So we can perhaps have the same make of laptop but different models, and they're not going to be the same. Thirdly, we're going to be taking a look at troubleshooting common laptop issues. Also includes, but is not limited to, things like maybe your laptop's power cord. So that little power cord you plug into your laptop, that's actually a very common issue of most laptops where that would actually go and fail, believe it or not. So that's just going to be one of the things. So now that we've got some of the main topics out of the way, guys, like usual, do me a solid and give the video a like. It does help my video, does help the channel, and if you like the content, maybe subscribe. Alright guys, all that's left to do is to go and have a look at our first topic for today. First up, we have laptops, just laptops in general. So a laptop is a powerful portable computer offering similar functionality to a desktop computer, something I'm sure you guys already knew. Contains special hardware designed for portability. So in other words, you'll find that the hardware is much smaller and much slimmer in size than a desktop. If you go look at the hard drive is much smaller. It looks like a solid state hard drive. If you go look at the graphics card, if you go look at the RAM chips, everything physically is smaller and slimmer in size. This is to ensure that everything can fit into a compact space, being your laptop, and also to ensure they use minimal power and just in overall makes the laptop smaller in size. Laptops generally run on AC, but can also run on a battery, assuming your battery is still working. Uses the same operating systems as desktop PCs, exactly the same. So if you can run Apple on your desktop, you can run Apple on a laptop. If you can run Windows on a desktop, same applies to the laptop. Now the models obviously vary. You get your entry level, laptops, the very cheap ones. So if I want to go and get myself a cheap laptop, you're going to get what you pay for. You're going to barely be able to run Windows, and most likely you'll only be able to run things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, the basics. Generally, laptops are ultra portable. So you get big ones, you get small ones, but even the bigger ones can fit into a backpack if you go check them out. They are the replacement for desktops. Now, there was actually a saying many moons ago where they said laptops were going to completely replace desktop PCs. And yet, desktop PCs are being used just as much. Now, granted, there are more people with more laptops now going around, but desktop PCs absolutely have not been replaced. And they will never be replaced for that matter. You can also go and use your laptop as a media center. So you can go plug it into a TV. You can use it as is to go and watch on movies, to go and play games on it, to go and listen to music. There's many ways you can actually go about this. And then lastly, you can go and use a laptop as a gaming machine. Now, my personal advice to you guys would be, if you're going to go and use a laptop as a gaming machine, you're probably going to be better off using a desktop PC. So if you're going back and forth deciding whether you want to go get yourself a laptop or a desktop, it's probably going to be better to get a laptop. Reason being, laptops are way more expensive than desktop PCs in general. And also, there's not much you can go and upgrade. Quite a lot of components on the laptop, like the graphics card, for example, which you go and use for gaming, can generally not be upgraded. Can only be replaced, not upgraded. Whereas compared to a desktop PC, you can in fact go and upgrade the graphics card and you don't have to go and replace the whole PC. So the PC is going to be cheaper, it's going to be easy to go maintain, and you can go and actually upgrade things. The only reason why you'd want to go and buy yourself a gaming laptop is if you really have an obsession of laptops, or if you intend on carrying this PC with you a lot to other places. But if you're going to be gaming from one fixed location like your house, which is what most of us do, my advice is get a desktop PC. And then next up, we've got ourselves touchpads. Now, I'm sure most of you guys already know what a touchpad is. It's obviously an input device. And ideally, the idea here was for it to replace the mouse. Now, I don't know why you would want to go and do that because, quite frankly, in my opinion, the mouse is just more user friendly. You've got more control over your mouse cursor. But if you find yourself in a situation where you just don't have a mouse, it stopped working, or you can't afford a mouse, whatever your unique circumstances could be, at least you've got a touchpad. Most laptops, if not all, have themselves a touchpad. So you can go and use your touchpad. You just go and basically touch the touchpad, move your finger around on it, and it's effectively gonna move your mouse cursor. Now, depending on how old your laptop is and what kind of laptop you have, you might actually even find what they call a little joystick. So between some keys in your keyboard, it's normally either between F and G or G and H. Somewhere in that vicinity, you will find a tiny little joystick which you can actually go and wiggle around with your mouse finger or your your finger in general, and that's also going to go and move your mouse pointer. Some laptops might actually have both. It might have a touchpad as well as that little joystick. So as you guys can see, it's an alternative to using a mouse, not better in my opinion. Supports for multi-touch and gestures. So you can go and zoom in and out. You can right click, left click. You can do all kinds of things. Double click. Configured via the mouse applet in Windows, as you can see in the pictures. So your pictures or your menus might not look exactly like mine, but that's fine. I think these serves their purpose. So generally, whether you've got a mouse or a touchpad, there should be an option somewhere in your control panel or your settings app where you can go and configure your mouse or your touchpad. This includes, but is not limited to, things like how sensitive the mouse cursor is, your DPI, and just in general, whatever settings you want to go and configure for it. And then we also have keyboards. Now, this one that you guys can see there is obviously a normal keyboard, but on a laptop, I'm sure you know, these are built into your laptop. Now, this does not stop you from getting yourself a normal keyboard and simply just plugging it into a port like a USB port. So it's a choice. You can go use the laptop keyboard, and if you don't like it, get yourself a normal keyboard and plug that sucker in. Same with a mouse. You can go use the touchpad. If you don't like the touchpad, get yourself a mouse and plug that sucker in. Now, whether you use the laptop keyboard or an external keyboard, they generally have keys that you can go and use to adjust your display, the resolution, maybe the brightness. Generally, it's more the brightness. Screen orientation. So that normally involves pressing things like Control Alt and then just pressing arrow keys, to make the screen rotate and things like that. Wireless, Bluetooth, cellular, and GPS depending on your unique keyboard. Volume, but normally volume includes you having a function key. So if you're going to be using your laptop keyboard, you will most likely have to press a function key of some kind. It's normally listed as FN. You have to hold this key down, and while doing so, you can go and press certain keys on your keyboard, maybe arrows, maybe certain numbers, or the F keys, and these will give you additional functionality. Whereas compared to a desktop keyboard, not necessarily. There's normally dedicated keys for these functions. So you can see some keyboards will obviously have a backlight. This includes external and laptop ones. Some have them, some don't. You can go and get yourself a touchpad on a laptop and then obviously media options. I personally love myself a keyboard that's got media options. So if you are a kind of person that likes to listen to music while working, then you need to go and get yourself a keyboard with media keys. This includes, but is not limited to, things like play, stop, forward, reverse, next song, previous song, those kinds of buttons. So it's going to make your life a little bit easier if you have yourself a keyboard with those keys. Now, if you don't have one, well, that's fine. You can still go and do the old-fashioned way. The keys are simply just there to make things quicker and easier on you. Alrighty, now something we also have is displays and touchscreens. Now obviously all laptops have screens, but not all laptops have touch screens. I myself don't really like a laptop with touchscreen because it makes the screen dirty and smudgy. I'm the kind of guy that would like to have it though, so have and not need. I don't like to be the guy that needs but does not have, if that makes sense. So generally touchscreens is something that's more common on something like a tablet, a phone, or those oversized phones which I think they call notes. You can go and use your touchscreen by using either your finger or what they call a stylus, which is just a fancy pen if you go and think about it. If you need to go and adjust some sort of settings on your computer, you can go and do that in the tablet PC settings menu, which you can actually see a picture of here on the right hand side. You can also go and do calibration if needed. That is just simply how sensitive it is. So if I press here on the screen or there on the screen, how sensitive does it actually is? How sensitive actually is it? And if I want to go and move my finger across the screen, how quickly does the cursor actually move? That is the calibration settings they're talking about. Now, if you were to go and ever strip a phone, a tablet, or a laptop screen that is a touch screen, you would actually encounter that it actually has multiple layers. The first of which is actually called the digitizer. That first layer is the one that senses pressure, heat, or anything like that. Sometimes it's actually all of the above. And usually when you go and drop your phone or your tablet and you see your screen crack, you would find that actually in most cases it's not the whole screen that actually is cracked. It is just the front layer, being the digitizer. And usually when you go and take it into a phone store or some sort of store that repairs your tablet or phone, they charge you an arm and a leg, and the fact of the matter is it actually does not cost that much in most cases because it's usually just the front layer that needs to be replaced. And this can be done and repaired with normal household items. You don't need any special tools, any special doohickeys, nothing. Now sure, the technicians have special tools to get the job done. That simply just makes the life quicker and easier, but it can be repaired with normal household items like a bank card and a hairdryer. I kid you not, a hairdryer and a bank card. Preferably not your existing card. This should be an expired card you no longer need because you might mess up the bank card. Now when it comes to expansion options for a laptop, in other words, giving it extra functionality, this is basically the ports. You can go and get yourself ports all over the laptop, to be perfectly honest. This could be on the left, it could be on the right, and usually it is on the left or right. In some cases it might be in the front, but that's normally going to be something like your memory card reader. And there actually are laptops out there where it might even be at the back of the laptop. That is also rare, so normally with most modern laptops, most of your ports are going to be either on the left or the right. Not likely you're going to find them on the back of the laptop. That's normally the older laptops. So you'll find that most laptops have at least one video port. This is normally something like a VGA port or an HDMI port or both. Some of the newer laptops might even have themselves what we call a display port. Now generally most laptops have a USB port. We know what USB ports are. But what you might not know is you get different kinds of USB ports, different colors and different speeds. So you'll have yourself USB A ports. Those are the ones that looks like black. Black is, normally the speed I think is like 2.0. What they call it, black. The black ones is just USB 2.0. Very slow. I think that's about 488 megabytes. Then you've got yourself USB Type C. Now if you're going to go and look inside your USB port and you see they're colored blue, that's USB-C 3.0. So it's USB 3.0, much faster than USB Type A. Now these are the equivalent to Thunderbolt, which is actually an Apple thing, but they are compatible with one another, for those of you that don't know. You would also find yourself microphone and speaker jacks. Speaker jacks is something I've seen on all laptops, but a microphone jack, actually not. So this laptop I'm using right now doesn't actually have a microphone jack. It's got speaker jacks, but no microphone jack. So it varies. So the laptop I'm recording on today has a speaker jack, but no microphone jack. This varies. Most laptop actually has both. For some weird reason, this laptop of mine does not have it. So I've got to go and plug in a microphone that has some sort of USB capability, or I've got to use the built-in mic in this laptop, which is a bit of a frustration. So yeah, you never know. Now laptops generally have what we call an RJ45 port as well. Most laptops would have that unless you're using a very slimline laptop. Now for those of you that's not familiar with the RJ45 port because, well, maybe you've forgotten or maybe you didn't watch that module yet, that is simply your network port. The port where you would go and slide your network cable into. Now that picture we've got there is actually external network card or a network port for those of you that don't have that port. So that little port you see way on the right, that is an RJ45 port, my people. So yeah, that's for the people that don't actually have one, or maybe you broke it. Lastly, you might be lucky enough to have a memory card reader on your laptop. If you have one, it's usually in the front, but it could also be possibly on the left side from what I've seen. USB adapters include, but are not limited to, USB to RJ45, which is what we see in the picture there on the right. I personally don't like those very much because for some weird reason they fail like nothing. I've worked with many in my life because some of my clients didn't have an RJ45 port because they were using extremely thin client PCs, really cheap PCs, which didn't even come out of RJ45 ports. So I had to go and give them those external network adapters, network cards if you want to call them that, and those things tend to fail like crazy. You can go and get yourself a USB to Wi-Fi, USB to Bluetooth, and also alternatively a USB to optical drive. Those are rare. I have seen them a few times in my life, but they're generally very rare. And that was in the beginning when people were still using them. So I think right now at this point in time, you'll be lucky if you ever see one because people just don't use DVDs or CDs anymore. Okay, and then next up we've got physical locks. Now you'll notice in the picture there, it is a lock that's actually tied to a laptop. Not all laptops support this kind of lock, but it is very useful in an environment where you think a laptop might get stolen or compromised in some sort of manner. So yeah, you're gonna have to go and buy those chains extra, and they normally work with some sort of combination, like a padlock of some kind. I personally used to use these quite a lot at some stage. I would normally go to some of my clients, physically out to the client's designation or the client's company. And once I get to this client, I would normally take about 10, 20, 30, or 40 laptops with me. And I would train the clients on my laptops because they don't have proper PCs. Now, in that kind of situation, I've got a lot of computers at this client's premises, and that is my property, and I'm afraid that they may or may not get stolen, these laptops. I don't want that. So what I ended up doing was I got myself 30 or 40 or so of these little chains that's got little combinations on them. I made them all the same because can you imagine I have to try and remember 40 combinations? There's just no freaking way. And what if I mix those chains up because they all looked identical? So the not so secure part was I used the same combination. The secure part was I never told anyone this combination, so only I knew the combination. So on all of these laptops, I would go and tie them to the laptop and tie it to the desks or tables or something like that. And it just makes it so much harder for people to just grab a laptop, put it under their shirt, and make way with it. So yeah, if you are in an environment or if you know of an environment where there's laptops and you know these laptops are going to go missing, maybe consider getting one of these chains. You can hook it up to that laptop, assuming it's got the right port, and that will potentially prevent people from stealing that laptop. Okay, let's take a bit of a look at laptop disassembly processes. So for those of you that's looking to go and disassemble a laptop for whatever reason, whether it is because you want to go and upgrade it, assuming you're lucky enough to be able to do so, or because you might want to go and troubleshoot something in the laptop. Either way, potato or potato, there are certain procedures you need to go and follow, and this is going to make your life a lot easier, especially in the beginning if you're still new to this. So with regards to the laptop assembly process, one of the things you guys should probably be aware of is laptops generally use smaller screws than desktop PCs. A lot smaller. And these things also come in various sizes. Most desktop PCs use like one, maybe two kinds of screws, and they're very generic. Whereas compared to laptops, they've got various sizes, but they all are very small in size. That's the common factor here. All small, but yet even though they are small, they come in different sizes. And once you take that laptop apart, that's the easy part. Putting it back together and knowing which screws go where, screws. That is a tricky situation. So what most technicians will encourage you to go and do, and this is not actually part of the course, is you get a piece of paper or something and you make little circles on that paper, maybe the size of, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 centimeters, maybe 1 or 2 inches, and in that circle you will go and put certain screws. So when you maybe remove the back panel of your laptop, those screws you put in the first circle and you go and label that circle. Once you're going to remove another component, whatever screws you take out, you make a new circle for that and you label it. So the more you go, the deeper you go, in other words, the more screws you're going to go and loosen of various sizes. And eventually, when you're done with all of this, you're not going to remember where which screws go. It's really going to mess you up. So if you have that piece of paper that shows you exactly which screws go in where because you've put them in those little circles, that, my friends, is going to make your life so much easier. Generally, when it comes to removing these screws, you can go and use a jeweler's tool set, but that's not compulsory. All you need to know is it's very small precision screwdrivers. That's all you need to know. So yeah, you can see here they mention document your screw locations, organize the ribbon cables as well. So wherever you're going to remove ribbons or connectors, never mind the screws, make a mental note, or preferably a note even on paper. What I myself like to go and do, because all laptops are unique in their own way, is I also take photos. So if you're about to go and remove some sort of ribbon somewhere, take a photo perhaps before you go and do that. If you're about to go and remove some sort of connector, take a photo before doing that. And eventually, when you get to the end and you need to go and put these back, you can go refer to your photos and you can see exactly the way they were. It's going to make your life easier. Now, when it comes to form factors and plastic frames, most use proprietary components. And the chassis of a laptop, this is the actual laptop housing itself, normally consists of what? It consists of things like the motherboard, obviously, a power supply. Now, the power supply is not necessarily inside of the laptop unless we're referring to the battery. Display screen, which is obviously embedded in the bezel. A keypad, not the best one necessarily, but it's embedded. And a touchpad. Now, we're not going to say joystick because most laptops don't have those little joysticks we were referring to earlier. Also, you can see it's mentioned here that review manufacturer's service documentation before starting upgrades or repairs. There may or may not be information in there that you did not know, which is applicable to this specific make or model of laptop. You might find information like this unique model is not upgradable. Maybe it already has the maximum amount of RAM available and you cannot go and upgrade it. Or the motherboard does not support more RAM. Maybe the graphics card can be replaced. Maybe it's using an internal graphics card and not an actual graphics card you can go and remove. So that is information you might find in the manufacturer's service documentation, and this is also available online. I myself personally just normally go online. I run a search for that specific make and model of laptop, and I go and view all the information of that laptop before I even try and upgrade it or repair it, especially when it comes to upgrading. If a client perhaps wants you to go and upgrade his or her laptop, you might want to go run a search first for that laptop and just check if it actually is upgradable. Otherwise, you're going to end up putting yourself in an awkward situation where you tell this client, sure, I'll go and do it for you, only to realize later that it's actually not possible to go and upgrade this laptop. Not a situation you want to go and be in, right? Okay, next up, laptop FRUs. And FRUs, for those of you that don't know or haven't seen it yet, stands for Field Repairable Units. Now, what this means in a nutshell is what parts on a laptop PC can be swapped. So what parts can be upgraded in some cases, or more importantly, repaired. Now, with desktop PCs, you can go and repair almost anything. You can go and change the CPU, you can go and change the motherboard, hard drive, you name it, it can probably be swapped, changed, or even upgraded. Laptops, yes, things can be swapped, and in some cases, if you're very lucky, even upgraded, but it's a lot less parts that can be swapped and especially upgraded. So FRUs are accessible from behind a screw plate on the bottom of the unit. So you're going to have to go and turn the laptop upside down, remove the plastic housings or plastic coverings there. You might even need to go and remove the battery in most cases. And once you do that, keep note of where you put those screws, as we've said previously. And this is going to give you access to some of the hardware. So you might generally see the hard drive immediately, but the RAM, for example, not necessarily. Sometimes on some laptops, removing one small little plastic panel exposes the RAM. Easy peasy chicken cheese, you see it immediately. Where with some other laptops I've worked with, you had to strip the whole laptop just to get to the RAM. It's literally beneath the keyboard in some cases, and that's not a situation you want to be in. So hopefully for you guys, the laptops you work with is not going to be like the ones I had to go and work with. We had to strip the whole laptop just to get to the RAM. So I don't know what the manufacturers were thinking. So some of the FRUs include, but it's not limited to things like the hard drive that you can normally go and replace, swap, or upgrade. Optical drive you can go and replace, but you're not going to upgrade it. You need to try and get the exact same make that laptop was using. RAM can be swapped and upgraded generally. Wi-Fi and other adapters, yeah, sometimes they can be upgraded. I would just say they can be swapped if your old one is not working. Now, speaking of laptop RAM, for those that don't know, is referred to as SODIMM. So whenever you see the word SODIMM, especially in the exam, just know that SODIMM is what we call laptop memory. So if you look in the picture there, the height of the RAM chip is still more or less the same. So from the connector to the opposite side, that will be the same. But the width of the RAM chip is about maybe half, maybe 2/3 of a normal desktop RAM chip. So SODIMMs slide into a laptop. You can normally have like one by default, sometimes two. And if you can go and upgrade the laptop, it's probably because it only has one RAM chip and you're about to slide in a second. If the laptop already has two RAM slots in, or two RAM chips in, I should say, or modules as some people call it, then you're probably going to be out of luck. You're probably not going to be able to upgrade that laptop unless you take the two RAM chips out, or one of them, and replace it with a bigger one, assuming that laptop actually supports a bigger module. Now, to be able to know that, you're going to have to go onto the manufacturer's website and run a search for that make and that model to check what that motherboard actually supports. Now, when it comes to the optical drives for laptops, that's the drive where you would go and put in your DVD or CD in the old days. I'm saying old days because, I mean, if you look at that, nobody really uses this anymore. And if you go to the average store nowadays to go and buy yourself a desktop PC or a laptop, you'll find that half of them, if not more than half of them, don't actually come out with an optical drive anymore. And there's a good reason for that, because who uses them? Nobody uses them anymore. The only reason why you might possibly even go and use it is to go and format your PC and install Windows. But for that, you don't need a DVD-ROM anymore. People use a memory stick for that because it's quicker. It's way quicker than using a DVD. The only issue that's sometimes messing people up there is not everybody knows how to go and make a bootable USB memory stick. But other than that fact, it's actually a lot easier and a lot quicker than using a DVD. It's my personal choice. It's my personal go-to method for formatting a PC in most cases is to go and use a DVD. To go and use a memory stick. Now these optical drives are generally slimline. They're very, very thin, but you cannot necessarily go and put one laptop's DVD-ROM into another laptop because of the physical dimensions. They're very weirdly and uniquely shaped. So you need to go and order the DVD or optical drive ROM for that specific laptop to get it to fit into that laptop. Now, as for laptop CPU and motherboard upgrades, that is something that's very difficult to go and upgrade. Normally, most people will not go and upgrade the CPU or the motherboard in a laptop. This is simply because it costs too much and there's too much effort. So usually when the laptop starts becoming outdated or too slow, the laptop generally gets replaced altogether. But if you ever happen to go through the whole process of changing the CPU, your motherboard may very well not support your new CPU. It 10 to 1 will not. The average laptop will last the average person about 2 to 5 years. And by then, there's going to be newer, better CPUs on the market, obviously. And you'll find the old ones that would have been considered upgrades are no longer available. So the ones that would have been considered upgrades, they're no longer available. You can go and buy those ones. And if you were to go and buy yourself one of the newer ones on the market, they generally don't fit on your existing motherboard because of the pins, and maybe they're too fast for your motherboard. So you're going to end up changing the whole motherboard now. Now you're thinking of a whole new problem. Your laptop's chassis will most likely not support that motherboard because of the physical dimensions. Remember, laptops are slimline, very, very crowded in there. So everything has its own little unique place, unlike a desktop PC where you can just kind of shove it in. So generally, in my opinion, it's not advisable to go and change the CPU or motherboard on a laptop. Yes, it's possible to go and change them. Changing them with the exact same model, that is advisable. Depending on how old the motherboard is, or the CPU is, or the laptop is, yes, that's advisable. It's probably going to work. But if you want to go and upgrade it, it's just not worth the hassle. I would say, honestly, just get yourself a new laptop, or better yet, get yourself a desktop PC. As for laptop video card upgrades, I would say about half of laptops actually have an embedded graphics card, so it's actually on the motherboard itself physically. Not the best graphics, but it gets the job done if you're a person that's using your laptop just for office work. So you might still have yourself an i7 or something better, maybe it's an AMD or something better. You might still have a lot of RAM on that PC, but your graphics card is very, very cheap. It's actually even embedded. That's how cheap it is. And that's fine for the average Joe. So for myself, if I'm not playing games, that would meet my needs. Now, there are also a lot of laptops out there that actually has a graphics card inside of it. Not nearly as good as a desktop graphics card because obviously cooling is a factor and space is a factor, but you do get laptops that have actual gaming graphics cards in them. Now, should you find yourself in the unfortunate position of having to need to go and upgrade such a graphics card, you're probably going to be fresh out of luck. It is possible in some very rare instances, but the chances are you're probably not going to be able to do that. If you do still want to go and do that, don't just go and buy a graphics card. Check the make and the model of that laptop and check what makes and models of graphics cards it actually supports. It's probably going to be a very limited list that you're going to be able to choose from because the physical dimensions, not performance, physical dimensions of that video card needs to be able to fit into your laptop. Remember, physical space is an issue in these laptops. Alright, let's take a look at laptop power supplies. Now, as I said in the intro of this module, laptop power supplies is actually a thing that fails most often on laptops. So if you ever find yourself on your own laptop, your client or your user's laptop where they complain the laptop does not want to start for some particular reason, I would say 9 out of 10 times it actually ends up being that power supply. So that little picture you guys see the top right hand side, that little box, that is 9 out of 10 times based on my experience the problem. It's basically burnt out for the lack of a better description. So one way to test this without it costing you an arm and a leg and wasting a lot of your time is to go and grab someone else's charger or your own if you're lucky enough to have it be able to fit into that laptop because the jack is not always the same unless you have like a universal jack. So get another charger, plug it into that laptop it doesn't want to start, and if that laptop starts with that charger, then you know it is that adapter that's the problem. It might not be the only problem, but it's at least one of the problems. So it might be that the adapter has failed and that laptop's battery eventually just ran out and now that battery can't, charge because, well, it's obviously dead and the charger doesn't work. Now, eventually, when you get yourself a working charger, at least you know, okay, great. We fixed the charger. That was one of the issues. Then you just need to go and check if the battery is also an issue. So let the battery charge full, plug out the power cord, and see if it actually stays on the laptop. So at least with that, you can go and establish whether this was actually the power adapter or not. Now, as for the battery in most laptops, I think more than half of laptops, the battery is in fact removable, but more and more laptops, as well as cell phones actually in some cases, and even tablets, the battery no longer is actually removable. It's an all-in-one, if I think is what they call it. They call it an all-in-one. So in that such an event like that, if the laptop battery eventually fails, you're probably gonna have to replace the whole laptop. If the phone battery fails, you're gonna have to replace the whole phone. I don't know if this is on purpose, but I suspect it might be on purpose to force us and the market to have to buy new laptops, new phones, and new tablets because it's an all-in-one. The battery is physically embedded in that device. It's not removable. So maybe you completely strip the device. In some case, you might be lucky enough to be able to replace the battery. But generally, as the average end user, you cannot go and plug the battery out and you cannot go and replace it unless you take it into a store to a technician, which is probably going to be you guys most likely. Now, as for power and cooling issues, like I said, the most likely issue when it comes to laptop and power is that power supply. It might possibly be the battery. So if you plug out the power cord and the laptop dies almost immediately or very shortly afterwards, that's a battery issue. It could basically just be the matter of how that user used that laptop and that battery, or it might just be age. If it's a very old laptop, it might really just be an age factor and maybe it just needs a new battery. If you can't get a new battery, then maybe it's time to consider buying a new laptop altogether. Now, if it's a rather newish laptop and the battery fails, it could just be the way the person is using that battery. Generally, the rule of thumb is to never let a battery, charge permanently, is what they say. Most of us just plug laptops in, we leave it on a charger permanently, and we never actually let the battery run down. Some laptops, the battery does need to run down completely, in fact, from time to time, because it's actually good for it, believe it or not. Other laptops, you should never do that. We get some laptops, they're either or, it doesn't really matter. I think nowadays it doesn't really matter. Most modern laptops, it does not matter. You can let the battery go completely dead. You can go and leave it on the charger permanently. It does not affect your battery. So this is more applicable to the older laptops from about 10 years ago. If you have yourself a rather modern laptop that you bought in the last 5 years, I wouldn't say it's something you need to worry about. Even if it's a cheap make you bought, not something you need to go and worry about. Now, as for swollen batteries, that could be an indication of a battery that's about to fail. I would very urgently replace that battery or get rid of it, because it might actually even explode in some cases. Start leaking acid, which is obviously dangerous, or it could potentially explode. It could be because the battery is very old, once again. It could be because it's undercharging or overcharging. Most often because it's overcharging that battery. I have had weird situations where a battery would swell in a new device. It wasn't overcharging or undercharging, it just swells. And I had more than one of that device, exact same make and model, and the other devices did nothing. So it could just be a factory fault in some cases, you never know. Overheating is also an issue when it comes to powers and batteries, especially of laptops. So laptops, if overheating is an issue, what you can experience is a very slow and laggy laptop. This can be for many reasons. It could be because the thermal compound or heat paste on the CPU is dried out. This is more common on old laptops or a laptop that works very hard very often. Or it could be that the air vents is blocked. This could most often be by dust. But if you're using your laptop on a place like, let's say, your actual lap, I mean, that's kind of funny if you think about it. It's called a laptop, but if you use it on your lap, you actually smother the laptop. If you're going to use your laptop on your lap, you're actually going to smother the laptop. So get yourself something hard, maybe like a book or something, which you can put on your lap, and then you put the laptop on your lap. At least then you're not smothering that laptop, and if you're not smothering it, it's not going to overheat. The fans need to be able to breathe, just like you need to be able to breathe. Alright, boys and girls, like usual, that concludes this module. That's all, folks. So there's just 3 modules left, and they're going to be short modules for the most part. So thank you for supporting me up until now if you've been watching this whole course. And like usual, I would appreciate a like. If you find that this series is interesting and you're not part of the channel, maybe subscribe with the notification bell. And like usual, boys and girls, I will see you on the next module, being module 16.
If you love me, let me know. If you don't, then let me